and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Amy Horowitz with Informatica. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Wendy Janssen. Wendy is the Global Director and Head of Strategic Revenue Management Analytics at Mars. Wendy was on the list of the CDO Magazine Global Data Power Women of 2023. I'm very excited to talk to you today, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Amy, and a really, really great pleasure to be here.
Well, why don't we jump right in if we can? We've got some really great questions for you today, and I'd love to just get your opinion and hear your perspective on what's going on in the market today. The first one is around fostering a data-driven culture. So fostering a data-driven culture and enhancing data literacy continues to be a top priority for many organizations, many data leaders as well. What's been effective in your organization to drive a cultural change around data?
Yes, very good question. It's certainly one of the top priorities for us in Mars as well, and also the previous companies I sort of worked for. And when you initially start thinking about driving that data-driven culture, the first thing that comes to mind is building solutions, data solutions, tools, dashboards, you name it. But what we found is that tools alone is not enough. It's not going to transform the organization, unfortunately. And there are other aspects that are kind of really important that we figured out that need to work in harmony for this all to kind of to come together. And in Mars, we call that the honeycomb. So there are 5 particular elements, and they centered sort of around tools, processes, and people. And only when that kind of comes together, then you kind of get the magic and the music come to life. So as I said, the tools is one part. It's the data, the systems, the databases, etc. But only when they kind of get implemented and used in the day-to-day processes that exist in the business. So the way you do business on an everyday basis, if you can kind of implement the solutions in those processes, then it's sort of coming to life. Similarly with the organizational setup, it's like, what are the KPIs that people are going after? Are the tools speaking to those KPIs? Who is in charge? Who ultimately makes the decisions? And then the last part, as I mentioned, is around people, right? So do they have the right skills to kind of work with data? Do they know how to kind of pull the insights out of it and transform them into actions and drive these actions? As well as the whole cultural and the mindset, right? Because if everything's in place, but you keep doing the way you're doing things in the past, there's not going to be a kind of a change in how things move forward. So it's really adamant, and we found only when all these 5 pieces are working together, it works really well. But if one drops, then sometimes you kind of need to go back to the drawing board a little bit and then take it from there, because then it's not working.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned the KPIs and how you're measuring it at Mars and other organizations that you've been in. So how do you measure the business value? How do you measure the business value of the initiatives tied to this data culture? Can you dig in a little bit about the KPIs that you're using to measure that?
It's the business that sets the KPIs, right? So the mantra that we have is very much whatever we do is business led and it's analytics enabled. So depending on the part of the business you work for and the objective they might have metrics they want to measure around profit, penetration, sales value, you name it, right? So, and what we're doing, we're helping them with the analytical solutions to unlock those values. And we almost let the business tell the business what has worked, how this solution has kind of enabled them to achieve the goals they set out. And you see that that's kind of really, really working well, is that one business leader hears from the other business leaders like, oh God, this is really kind of working for them. I want to jump on that bandwagon and do the same. And then from my side, where we're really kind of interested is in understanding is like, how is the adoption of the solutions that we build, right? And we're working with other analytics and governance teams within the organizations to do things like surveys. So asking the users is like, is the solution that we've built relevant? Are you trusting the outcomes and the data? And based on the feedback they give, we can then tailor and tinker the solutions to really make them valuable for them. And for us, that's really kind of how we measure whether we're successful. Because coming back to what I said initially, I think the value only really comes through if it's truly embedded within the processes and people are using it on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm aiming for, and what I encourage my team to aim for, is like, you ultimately want that business user to say, I cannot live without this data and the solution that's been built.
Yes, I love hearing that. So let's switch topics a little bit. You talked about the business users coming together. It's critical, I think. What we see in the market today is having those business users really connect with those consumers and producers together. Let's talk about generative AI, because as I sit down and turn on the news, as I sit
Yes.
down at my dinner table, generative AI is a topic that everybody is talking about today. Is this impacting your data strategy today and your priorities? And if so, how is it going at Mars?
It's the talk of the town, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think we all need to have a little play with it.
Yeah.
Yourself, I kind of used it just to kind of
Yeah.
make up stories for my niece. That's where it started. And then
Yeah.
kind of you understand the value a little bit. It's like, oh, let's see how I can make my presentation sound a bit more cleverer and all these kind of things. So, but yeah, equally our stakeholders are asking for it, right? They've played in their own personal time with it, seen the value of it, and say, wouldn't it be nice if, rather than me scrolling through this dashboard or I don't know, running this scenario, I could just type in what is the impact of, and the answer will come. So we're running pilots on that. We're trialing bits and pieces, but what's absolutely crucial and critical for this to work is a solid sort of data foundation, and connected data foundation. And whilst we're already on that journey of building that, if anything, it has sped up that process, right? Because you almost want to maybe jump straight into what can this generative AI do. And for that, as I said, to enable that, you need to have that connected data foundation. So there's a lot of effort and a lot of focus going into that space.
I agree with you. I think it's everywhere. We're going to see it more and more often. I hear the same thing. So thank you for sharing. Let's switch topics. We talked again about your business users and enabling those business users, and I love what you said about, other businesses telling other lines of business how they're working, and your goal of having a culture that you can't live without this data. So let's talk about how we do a little bit of a balancing act. One of the biggest challenges faced by data leaders is balancing the need to democratize the data with empowering data consumers while ensuring responsibility of the data. This is a big topic we hear about all the time. So what are some of the best practices you can share on how you're doing this today? How do you manage that balancing act?
I think the way we work is like we work very, very closely with the business. So my team and I were almost the first point of contact for the business, right? So we understand the functional area in depth, and we understand as well the technical side, the data science, the data engineering, not to the depth of detail that a true data engineer would, but enough to kind of have those side of conversations. So we're almost that trusted business partner, analytics partner of the business. So we can help them a little bit kind of in that governance, right? So we understand what they need, what they're asking for, and we then build the solutions to kind of help them in that need. And we serve them up when they need it. We understand what they need. So we have a little bit of control in that way, that what we give them serves their needs and they use it in kind of the right kind of way. And then the other thing we're doing is we're in a global team. We're working very closely with a regional analytics teams who help us in that governance as well. So they have oversight of all the analytical solutions that are built within the region, whereas I focus on one particular domain area, so strategic revenue management, as we were saying before. These folks in the region look across the business and actually say, okay, we've got solutions here, we've got solutions there. How does that all come together so that the business is not overwhelmed and are using it in the kind of the right way? So we're not alone in our quest there. I think we got a lot of help and support from other functions that are very closely connected with us to kind of help the business move forward in the right way.
Fantastic. Wendy, thank you so much for joining me today. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.